Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on sustainable stations. It's Built Environment Day at COP26, where the summit will focus on how our buildings and urban realm can become more sustainable, an area HS2 is excelling at. As the host of this year's summit, there's a lot of scrutiny on the UK to show climate leadership and demonstrating we're walking the walk as well as talking the talk. High Speed 2 is the UK government's flagship infrastructure project, the biggest in Europe, and investment in new rail is a crucial component to decarbonise the transport sector, the country's biggest emitter of carbon. Today's session will focus on two areas around our stations, how they're being designed and built to the highest environmental standards, and how they'll integrate with other forms of low carbon transport to become sustainable transport hubs. After the presentation part of this webinar, we'll have a live Q&A where we'll be answering questions from the audience. We'll do our best to get through as many of these as we can. Now, we don't anticipate any technical issues during our event, but should you experience any connection issues, for example, if your feed freezes, wait for about 10 seconds or so and it will most likely correct itself. If this doesn't happen, use the leave button to exit the event and rejoin using the event link. This slide shows just some of the features of Microsoft Teams in case you're not familiar with it. Along the bottom are play, pause, volume and full screen controls, but do note that all attendees' microphones are muted. However, you can still participate through the submission of questions, like I said, through the questions panel on the right-hand side of the screen. If at any point during the conversation today you want to ask a question, do just click the Ask a Question button, hit send, and this will come straight through to me. I'll be keeping an eye on these questions, and then at the end, the panel will be answering them with our host, Matthew Patel. Finally, your feedback on today's event is greatly appreciated, and we will be sending around a short feedback form, which will only take a couple of minutes to complete. Before we begin, I want to quickly highlight the centrepiece of our activity for COP26. We proudly launched our virtual pavilion, an online environmental exhibition open to anybody. And appropriately for this webinar, it is a CGI representation of Interchange Station in the West Midlands, winner of a BREEAM Outstanding Award for Sustainability, putting it in the top 1% of buildings in the country for its environmental credentials, but we'll hear more about that later on. Visitors can walk around the station and interact with various hotspots to learn more about how HS2 is tackling climate change. It's a really good resource to find out about all the innovation happening on the HS2 project. Now, the UK presidency of the COP26 summit has laid out a number of focus areas, and HS2 is already contributing towards a lot of these. You can see that on the screen, you can see that some of these on the screen, and you can learn more about them in the virtual pavilion and, of course, on these webinars we're hosting. HS2 and our partners are innovating in all of these areas, becoming industry leaders and an exemplar government project. And today, we're going to be focusing on how HS2 is helping with the built environment agenda. Because like I said, today at COP26, that is what's taking centre stage. And as you can see, the UK presidency's goal is to take action on sustainability in our cities and regions. We're building a number of new stations along the phase 1 route and redeveloping others along phase 2. HS2 stations will be the regional front doors to the new high-speed network, and they will catalyse improvements to local transport networks, which will link in with the new railway. They've already won awards for their environmentally friendly design, and we'll hear more about that today. I now want to introduce our panel. Joining HS2 Limited will be Midlands Connect, Maestro Gardos and Arup. It's now time to hand over to them, so I want to introduce our Phase 1 Stations Director, Matthew Patel.
Thanks, Hugo. And it's great to be here today with colleagues from HS2 and wider industry. So before we dive down into stations, what I thought I'd like to do is just take it up a level and just remember with the endpoint how effective high-speed rail is in terms of carbon footprint. So the left-hand side of this graphic really shows this. Per journey, we're talking 8 grams for HS2 versus 170 grams by plane and 67 grams by car. So literally no comparison, by far the best mode of transport for the public. And moreover, what we're doing there is by getting people onto high speed, we're getting them off of conventional rail, freeing up capacity for freight, which is a dual benefit. And as a company, our commitments are far wider than stations. So the right-hand side of the graphic just is really representing this. We've got KPIs across all the contracts, not just stations. We're going to go deep dive into stations today, but it's across our civils contracts, across our high-speed rail contracts, across everything. And we look at the full life cycle. Moreover, we've also made a further commitment to seek to reduce 50% of carbon during construction of phase one. And also with that comes air quality emission requirement standards. It's all part of our wider environmental minimum requirements, and it's all in our contracts, which is an absolute key point for me for making it real. Now, what we're going to talk about today is the KPIs that are in the contracts, and our head of architecture, Laura Kidd, is going to do a deep dive into the BREEAM approach that we've taken for the stations, which is really world leading, and she'll go into that in detail. But as I talked about a minute ago, it is really a whole life cycle process. So we work closely with our maintenance and operation colleagues to make it as efficient and as effective as possible. And in that, there's several other aligned contracts that we put in place for common components. So we get the best lifts and escalators, as a for instance, across all the stations. So we maximize every contractual benefit we can, and all of those have carbon benefits. What we've also tried to do is create multimodal hubs at every single location. So for interchange, there's a key interface to the automated people mover that joins to the NEC and to the airport, and will actually really be central to key local development there and serving it with environmentally friendly, low carbon transport options. Curzon Street, we've got Midlands interface with the tram, and it's great to have a representative from the Midlands here who can talk about that more later. Euston, massive interface to not only conventional rail, but also to London Underground. And Old Oak Common, we've got the Elizabeth line stopping there, as well as an 8-platform conventional station. So massive interchange with all the stations. And we've also got unprecedented levels of bicycle and pedestrian access, and limited car access, particularly in terms of the London stations, where we've been part of the wider emphasis of TfL to reduce carbon footprint even further. And last but not least, another subject which we won't be going into so much detail today, but it is critical, is we are a catalyst for development. Each of these stations has a seismic effect on the surrounding development. And what we do is work with key partners to make that as environmentally friendly as possible. So we don't just want the stations to be excellent, we want them to be a beacon for surrounding environmental development. And with that, what I'm going to do now is we're going to play you a multimodal hub video which will really bring to life what we're doing for all 4 stations in phase 1.
HS2 will become the low-carbon backbone of our transport network, and our stations will be amongst the greenest in the world. They'll connect with walking, cycling and public transport routes, encouraging low-carbon travel across the country. As part of the Curzon Street station design, we've given careful consideration to cyclists by adding dedicated cycle access points, and at our interchange station, we'll include electric vehicle charging points. The stations will improve access to other modes of low-carbon transport, with the Midland Metro running alongside and underneath Curzon Street Station, as well as cycleways, pedestrian routes to local and rapid transit buses and other train services. Old Oak Common Station in London will link with the Elizabeth line and other regional services taking passengers to Heathrow in central London and trains to Wales and the west of England. When passengers choose HS2, they'll be choosing a low-carbon way to travel.
Good morning. My name's Laura Kidd and I'm Head of Architecture at HS2. I'm not going to be talking much about the specific station designs today, but sharing HS2's BREEAM story. So, what is BREEAM? BREEAM stands for the Building Research Establishment's Environmental Assessment Method, and it's one of the world's leading sustainability assessment methods for the built environment. It provides a rating scheme that awards points for a building's sustainable performance against set criteria across 10 assessment topics. These topics reflect environmental, social, and economic issues. We've selected BREEAM HS2 because it's a worldwide recognised and third-party assured tool, and it demonstrates our sustainability credentials to our stakeholders. It also challenges our supply chain to raise environmental benchmarks and set new standards in sustainable development. BREEAM evaluates the project across its life cycle, including specification, design, construction, and operation. And this is important to us because we can use it to assess the performance over the whole life of the building. The scheme aims to mitigate the whole life impacts of the building, promote best practice, and take a balanced approach, assessing a broad range of measures. It's an independent third-party scheme and provides a credible and audited benchmark of our performance, which can be used to compare buildings with our own programme and externally. HS2's commitment to BREEAM is mandated in the HS2 Act as an environmental minimum standard. This EMR supports our sustainability policy's ambition. Here are the 10 BREEAM impact categories which are used to assess the building's sustainability. All our designs include for all of these categories. Each category contains a number of assessment topics, and each of these have a number of credits associated with them. The assessment must provide a robust evidence to demonstrate that the requirements of the credit have been met. For example, evidence for material covers the specification of low-impact materials, the efficient use of materials, and responsible sourcing materials. Additional credits can be gained for innovations that bring sustainability benefits that go beyond current best practice. A building can be assessed at both design and post-construction stage. The design stage assessment is labelled interim, with a final certified rating coming after the project is complete. The BREEAM scheme has got 5 ratings from pass to outstanding, depending on the overall score achieved. The outstanding rating puts a building within the top 1% for sustainability performance, with excellent rating, the HS2 minimum for all our buildings, representing the top 10%. In the early days of the project, HS2 worked closely with BRE to establish a bespoke set of criteria for the station buildings. This doesn't mean that they're easier, but it's enabled BRE to include criteria that are applicable and essential for sustainable station buildings. An example is the addition of credits for building legibility and wayfinding. These are crucial for the success of stations' accessibility and inclusivity requirements. Of all the new stations, having a legible design is really important because of their scale. The HS2 platforms are nearly half a kilometre long, and providing clear wayfinding from the station entrance through to the train seat is key for the success of the service. To help our contractors navigate a successful delivery of their BREEAM obligations, we produced an HS2 BREEAM Building Technical Standard. Now, this helps them get a head start after the contract award, as they've got all the material such as established baselines, expected scores, developed bespoke criteria, and pre-registration information prior to commencing the main assessment. This standard has helped our contractors to be well informed about our BREEAM expectations from day one. With this technical standard, we also developed a concept of minimum performance requirements in certain credit areas, and these are mandatory for the contractors to target. The above mechanism provides a robust way to embed BREEAM requirements from the outset and has been a great means to drive best practice and raise environmental benchmarks. Now, HS2 has recently embarked on a Learning Legacy programme. So if you'd like to find out more about our use of BREEAM on the project, the first phase of this Learning Legacy programme has a paper covering the use of BREEAM on the project. As I previously said, the stations are large scale and their key structures are designed to meet 120-year material life. The choice of materials and their systems that the station require, they need to be really interrogated to come up with the best sustainable solutions and outcomes. We've all committed to achieving the highest possible sustainable standards, and this also helps drive the best design visions. So, where are we with BREEAM in stations at the moment? Euston Station is the HS2 terminus in central London. It's already an established key transport interchange, including Network Rail, London Underground, buses, taxis, cycle hubs. Sustainability is at the forefront for the new station design. For example, innovative hyperpiles are proposed for the site accommodation building. This technique gives up to 80% reduction in materials and emissions and greater on-site productivity. Hyperpiles help to achieve carbon reduction and circular economy aims. The station will incorporate ground and air sourced heat pumps, rainwater attenuation through a blue roof, and zero cement concrete. HS2 station is yet to reach scheme design stage, but the concept design has assessed that it's on target of achieving excellent rating for both HS2 and LU stations. Old Oak Common Station in West London has completed its scheme design and is progressing with detail design. The station will have HS2 train services below ground in a deep box, and these will be linked by an overbridge to the Network Rail and Crossrail or Elizabeth Line services. The designers have included many sustainable measures and are currently on busy targeting an outstanding for their detailed design BREEAM. There has been progress against HS2's 50% carbon reduction, with 43% reduction currently demonstrated, and further reduction opportunities are under assessment. The substructure redesign saved 5,600 tonnes of CO2 by reducing the number of piles from 387 to 161. The station specifies recycled and low-carbon concrete mixes, which reduces embodied carbon by 59,000 tonnes. The urban realm design above the cupboard box, well, that's really exciting because it's a significant landscaped area with ecology enhancements, including a wetland common, wildlife planting, and the buildings out there will have green roof facades and roofs. It's going to be a great new place for the community and for the travellers. The new Curzon Street station in central Birmingham is set to reduce carbon emissions by an unprecedented 55%. It will achieve net zero carbon emissions from regulated energy consumption and use a range of technologies to generate energy from renewable sources. The station will achieve net zero carbon emissions through reducing energy demand and consumption from building integrated systems, for example, by using LED lighting and generating low carbon energy through solar panels and ground source heat pumps. This station is also targeting outstanding for their design BREEAM assessment. Interchange Station, the HS2 station near Birmingham Airport, has recently been awarded BREEAM Outstanding certification at design stage, the first railway station in the world to achieve this rating, of which we're really proud. The green and blue design vision of the station has resulted in an inspiring sustainable design, and a fuller picture of sustainable developments at Interchange is on a following video. So, what do you need for success? HS2 sponsors BREEAM at the highest levels through the environmental minimum requirements and HS2 sustainability policy. The targets and requirements are also cascaded through to all the contracts works information. You need to establish good supply chain management, pre and post engagement, and we have established a contractor-led BREEAM working group to efficiently deliver our BREEAM targets. The continued engagement with BRE is also very important. BREEAM Innovation Credits and HS2 Innovation Hub, which the contractors work with to drive innovation through their delivery, have also helped us to drive innovation and BREEAM success. Now for that promised video about the Interchange Station.
Our ambition is to build the world's most sustainable railway of its kind. Our new HS2 Interchange Station, which will be in the West Midlands, has achieved the BREEAM Outstanding certification. the highest sustainability award for new buildings. This puts Interchange Station in the top 1% of eco-friendly buildings in the UK, recognising our commitment to protecting the environment. Through the station's pioneering design, we've reduced the need for energy by using natural ventilation and daylight, and have included eco-friendly features such as a station roof design which can capture and reuse rainwater, energy-efficient technology, solar panels, and LED lighting, which will mean the day-to-day running of the station will be carbon neutral.
Well, thanks very much, Laura, and to Matthew as well. We now want to get you guys involved with the conversation. So here's a reminder of how to submit your questions using the Q&A function in the top right-hand corner of the screen. We're going to answer as many as we can in the time we have available. Thanks to everyone who's been submitting questions during the session. I think we're going to start with a few of those, but please do keep them coming during the Q&A panel. Here's a quick reminder of who's on our panel this afternoon. We've got Andrew from Mace Dragados, Karen from Midlands Connect, Kim from Arup, as well as Laura as well, who we've already heard from, and they'll all be joining Matthew, who is the host. I'm now going to hand over to them.
Thank you, Hugo. And I can see we're sending in the questions, so I'm ready to start putting them to the panel. And the first question we've got, I think, is straight for you, Laura, straight off the back of your presentation. Is the objective to have all HS2 stations awarded BREEAM Outstanding, like Interchange?
Well, it's certainly the ambition, and the stations that are busy still in design, working hard, they're trying to get there. I mean, Old Oak Commons is within a few percentage points of getting towards their design outstanding. And I know Curzon Street are also targeting that. Unfortunately, we can't really talk about Euston much because they're still in very much the early stages of their design. But to get all of our stations outstanding would be a goal, and it's certainly a stretch target for all of the projects.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I would say it's definitely our ambition. Yeah, it's definitely our ambition to strive for outstanding as far as possible. We've got one here really specific for you, actually, Karen. If I get a train to Birmingham Moor Street, how long will it take me to transfer to Curzon Street Station?
Yeah, thanks very much, Matthew. So at the moment, we're doing a lot of work ourselves and also with Birmingham City Council and West Midlands Rail Executive to make that seamless interchange between Moor Street and Curzon Street as short as possible. I mean, we're talking kind of 1 to 2 minutes walk. It's a really short distance. And with some other schemes that we're doing around Midlands Rail Hub, we're going to bring a lot of towns and cities in the Midlands much closer to HS2 than is currently planned. Places like Hereford, Worcester, and also Cardiff and Bristol in the southwest. So we're really excited about our plans, and hopefully everyone will really benefit from that really close interchange between Moor Street and Curzon Street.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karen. Got one here, Andrew. I think it'd be good for you, particularly thinking about the supply chain and how the supply chain's reacting. Really, what are some of the innovations that you think will make the biggest impact in reaching the sustainability goals? And I'm thinking in construction as well as the actual designs.
Well, there's a couple of things we're working on. One very exciting development that was referred to in the presentation is the hyperpiles. And piling isn't something that has been particularly innovative, but these hyperpiles are hollow impression piling, which obviously uses a hell of a lot less material. There's much reduced material, and therefore the carbon impact of the piling is also much reduced by as much as about 80%. But what's also exciting is the potential to put monitoring into those things so that they're potentially reusable, so as we strive to work towards a circular economy. Another exciting development I'm working on is the CARES cloud, which is digitizing the chain of custody for rebar so that we know much better about the materials, and we're working very closely with CARES, the industry body, one of the industry bodies for rebar, to develop this system, and it's being trialled at Euston as we speak.
Fantastic. There's a few examples there, and I know we're actually, a key thing is we're learning lessons across the supply chain. So the contracts that I'm personally running, I know we have a lot of interface to the main work civils, because the civils are actually further ahead with some of the construction, and they're rolling that lessons learned out into our station contract. So I think that's an absolutely key point. We have quite big innovation sessions, dedicated weeks between all the contractors coming together to share best practice, and then we instruct that wherever possible across the full line of route. There's one here that I think I'll take. Has BREEAM standards been used as part of the pre-qualification process? It is a clear KPI in our contract. So basically, yes. In terms of the design process, we have to reach excellent, as Laura outlined. And both the designers and the contractors are fully committed to that. And it is a commitment under the contracts. As we said, the ambition is to go for outstanding, but the contractual minimum is excellent. So, another one for Karen. How will you resolve ease of access between Moore Street, Curzon Street, and New Street?
So as I said before, we're working really closely with Birmingham City Council and West Midlands Rail Executive. We're hoping to plan quite a significant sort of public realm scheme, I suppose, to make sure that all the other modes of transport, so your walking, your cycling, your tram, and also buses, are really easily accessible from all three stations, and with some really clear signposting between each of the three hubs. We're also looking at kind of really thinking very carefully about which local and regional rail services go into each of the three stations, so that the most logical interchange can take place. So that as I said before, the services from the likes of Hereford and Worcester are planned to come into Moore Street in the future, on the basis that we think they're the more likely people to want to change to HS2, whereas a lot of the local services will stay in New Street. So there's a lot of planning ongoing at the moment to really make sure we get that whole interchange process right, across all different rail modes, I suppose you would call it, but then other modes as well, to make sure that it's as seamless as possibly can be.
Thank you, Karen. And what I would say as well with that is that we at HS2, with our teams, work incredibly closely with the type of teams Karen's in. So we make sure our stations are actually sized, apportioned, and directed in the right flows. So we're very clear where the main flows are going to be, with quite detailed pedestrian modelling. So we make sure we interface and work with partners to get the right result. One here probably for you, Laura, and me. What is HS2's view on increasing the provision of EV charging at stations like interchange? And what are we going to do to look in the future to extend the need for those points in the future?
Well, we have been looking at the provision for EV charging, and there's still ongoing work in terms of researching about what will be the demand when the station opens. Because with HS2, it's sometimes really difficult, because in some ways you're looking in a crystal ball. You're trying to work out what's going to be needed for 10 years' time, and you don't really know the way things are going. You make the best assumptions that you can. So there is more work to be done on deciding what the level of EV charging will be at the stations. But then, of course, technology is moving very rapidly, and what cars or whatever mode of transport is operating and what their need is still something that we have to make a lot of assumptions on. But it's not been completely determined yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'd add to that is that we work incredibly closely with DfT and other government departments. Yeah. So we make sure we're very, very conscious of making the last conscious moment we can make the decision. So we do try and get the latest information to make the best decision, but we do also act in so we don't miss the boat entirely, and we make the best decision we can at the last point opportunity that we can.
Yeah.
So, and we do that in hand with the DFT. So, Andrew,
I'd be happy to come in on that one for a moment as well, if you'd like me to,
Yep.
Matthew. So,
absolutely.
So Midlands Connect have also been doing quite a lot of work on EV charging infrastructure across the Midlands. So not specifically at stations, or not just at stations, but actually the needs across all communities. So we have some really good data and published a report just a couple of weeks ago on the future of EV charging, and I think we're, again, similarly to before, we're really excited about the future that EVs hold, and more than happy to work with partners to make sure that we get those numbers right at stations. So I'm sure we'll be working together a lot in the future to talk about EV charging at HS2 stations.
Yeah, and as one of the questions highlights, interchange is a particular example because it's a new development area, and we are working closely with partners there to make sure we don't miss the last responsible moment. So yeah, no, absolutely. Andrew, one for you. Do you see a role for new 2D materials like graphene, for example, in reducing the amount of cement in concrete and dispensing with the need for rebar? There are several recent examples of it being used in floor slabs.
Yeah, very much so. I think there are lots of new exciting technologies that we're exploring, and like you were just saying, really, we're trying to sort of look at everything that we might be able to do to reduce environmental impact and make those decisions, as late as we consciously can, to be able to benefit from them. So I think there's some great potential with some of those sorts of materials that you're mentioning there, and indeed probably others that we're not quite yet aware of. So we're always interested to look at new innovations that are coming along that can help us save carbon and are more efficient as well.
Fantastic. Another direct BREEAM question, Laura. I think this one really is for both of us again. How are we sharing lessons learned from each station to help on the BREEAM assessments from station to station?
Well, I think that we've already answered that slightly by saying that we do have a contractor-led BREEAM group that actually works together to try and inform each other to make sure things are going on. The designers themselves work, although they're all working on different stations, they're very much involved in what the other's doing. There's quite a lot of peer group competition between them to actually push the boundaries to see if they can actually achieve, it's like, well, they've done that, we can do better. And it's very good, that sort of level of competition that you get between these designers that are working so hard to improve the sustainability credentials of their station designs. Yeah, so it's good.
So I could just add to that and say, oh, sorry, go on.
No, carry on.
Well, I was just going to say, I could add to that by saying, yes, there is a lot of competition, and competition is always good, and we are measured, regularly on our performance and compared against the other stations. So it's a good opportunity for us to try to beat the others, if you like, but also to see what other people are doing that we can learn from in our particular station. So competition's great.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I would say internally we do a lot of that as well. Laura works very closely with me and all the contract teams on the different station jobs, and internally we make sure we complement the supply chain innovation and shared learning with our learning legacy. Is a great way that it brings it all together, as you mentioned previously, Laura. So it's a sort of general question, really, and it's to all of you. And this is less for myself and Laura. It's how has the approach we've taken impacted the supply chain? So I can start with any of you, Kim. What has been the reaction amongst staff and supply chain?
I think it's certainly been really, really positive. I mean, I think for me the important thing is having an ambition really kind of galvanizes the design team, and there is a sense of people bringing their best game. I think that's really, really important. I think there's a lot of a sense of, actually, now that we've worked on this, there's a real sense of creating a community. There's a lot of sharing between different design teams. And I think there's a real sense of spirit, really. I think people feel that this is something really, really positive, and in a way, I think the other really important thing I think HS2 has sort of brought to the conversation is this idea of legacy and this idea of 120-year design life, all of which captures the imagination of a lot of very young people who are going to be the sort of future leaders of our industry.
I think I could add to that by saying there's a lot of learning legacy going on within the supply chain. So some of them have worked with us before, and one of the things we always say when we first meet them is, this is a different project to anything that you've ever done before. We're really upping the game here, and please, we encourage all of them to innovate and bring their, as you say, their best game to the project. And I think there's a lot of developments, standards such as PAS 2080 that we've achieved for the first time ever. It's quite a newish sort of standard anyway. But all of these things are then taken back into those organisations and used to improve those organisations for the benefit of other projects that are going to come later.
I think the thing I'd add to that, Matthew, is to say that what we've really created with HS2 and with the other programmes that we're delivering as Midlands Connect is we're creating local jobs for local people. So what we're projecting from a Midlands Connect point of view is significant economic growth as a result of HS2 reaching Birmingham and further north than that, and then the additional opportunity to invest further in the rail network just drives that even more forward, and as I say, gives the whole region a significant economic uplift. Which is really exciting, and really ticks kind of a lot of those levelling up agenda boxes that are really high priority to government at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear, because Laura and I would say the same thing. All those things are our objectives. Absolutely. We need to embrace, as Kim said, embrace the next generations. I think that comes through all of our organisations. The number of apprentices we're taking on board, apprentice graduates, and frankly, their passion for it will drive this on, and that's what's required. Laura, I don't know if you want to add anything on that subject.
No, except that this about involving the next generation, all the people and the contractors and the designers that we're using, they've all got that next generation working with them, and their enthusiasm is actually helping to drive these initiatives on. And it also gives them the feeling that they're actually doing something and something worthwhile, which I think is really good.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I think I just want to add, from my sort of personal perspective, is that the teams, you have to, with a young team, you have to be able to become accountable, and and they do hold you to account, which I think is a really important. Important kind of constraint in a way, so it does push you,
which is good for all of us. Challenge is good. It's one of the things a mantra we have for our teams. If we don't keep challenging ourselves, and in terms of everything, and carbon as well specifically, we're not going to get there. So fantastic. Thank you very much to the panel. I think we're basically run out of time. There's a few more questions. We'll come back in writing to any outstanding questions, but I'd just like to thank everyone for taking the time for watching us, and thank the panel for their engagement and shared wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody, and to our panel for that really insightful conversation. I think we're very grateful for everyone giving their time to speak to us today. So I want to echo what Matthew said there. Would like your feedback on today's session. So we will be posting the link in the event announcement. So please, and also look out for an email coming from us about that as well. We would like to hear what you think. thanks again for taking the time to tune in today and for the questions. We've tried to get through as many as we can during the time we've had available. If we didn't manage to answer your question today, or if you've got any other questions about the wider HS2 programme, please do contact our help desk, who are available all day, every day. And as Matthew says, we will also try and come back to some of those unanswered questions in writing as well. The last thing from me is just a reminder about our virtual pavilion, where you can learn more about how HS2 is tackling climate change as part of an interactive tour around Interchange Station in the West Midlands, which we've heard a bit about today. Recordings of today's webinars, as well as our previous two, will also be in the virtual pavilion. Go to hs2.org.uk/COP26 to access it. So thank you everyone for attending. I hope you've learned a little bit about how we're building sustainable stations, and I hope you'll join us again in the future. Thank you.